Are you having trouble getting your points or the tips of your triangle to match up at this intersection? In this video, I'll review some of the basics and then I'll demonstrate matching these 4 half-square triangles at the center seam. Always press your fabric before cutting. Whenever possible, cut your fabric on the straight of grain or the cross grain, as this stretches the least. Double check your cut pieces on your mat or on your pattern. Make sure you're sewing an accurate 1/4 inch seam. Use your ruler to check. This seam is about a thread larger than a 1/4 inch. This seam is exactly a 1/4 inch. Press after sewing, or better yet, press for ease of construction. On these 2 pieces, I press the seams in opposite directions. This one's going down and this one's going up, so as to avoid excess bulk. Before I match this intersection, I examine the diagonals of my squares. These diagonals must meet in the corner. If they're off a little, then chances are these points won't match. Put right sides together and nestle these seams. Pin if you feel it's necessary to hold this in place. I also like to make sure that all of these edges are lined up. Before I start sewing, I like to pull this back just to check that these 2 seams are lining up and ready to sew. I like to start with a little scrap of fabric and then lead my patchwork up to the needle. Sometimes I'll use the tip of my scissors or a stiletto to help hold this in place. I have a 1/4 inch foot on my machine and I'm using this as a guide to sew that 1/4 inch seam. When I get to the end, put another scrap in, sew off on that. Before I press, I want to check my points. So let me open this up. My points should match up here and be a 1/4 inch down from the top, because eventually I'll sew another piece of fabric up here and I'll need that seam allowance. So this looks good. I can press this seam open, or I prefer to let that seam talk to me, meaning that I press it where it falls. It looks like it's going to go to this side, so that's where I would press. When adding the next piece of fabric, I want to take care not to come up short here or to cut those tips off. Let me put right sides together, turn it over. I've checked to make sure all the edges are lining up. At this intersection here, I like to sew a thread over in this direction. Instead of sewing right through where that meets, I try to sew about a thread over so as not to cut off those points. So let me try that. I'll use the tips of my scissors to hold that down. And I'm coming in. Here's that intersection right here, and I'm going to sort of move a little over in this direction, just a teeny bit. Back on track. So here's my completed piece. The intersection is right here, and my seam allowance is just 1 thread over. So let's see what happens. All 4 of my triangle points meet. Perfect. I'm ready to press this towards the outside edge. For more info about half-square triangles, visit learnhowtoquilt.com. Click on the Beginner Basics tab. Scroll down to Piecing and Cutting Shortcuts. Thanks for visiting learnhowtoquilt.com. Please subscribe and share our videos with your friends.